Hello, this is going to be my interview with my mother. This is Christina Roberts, and she is Chicana. So she can have a different type of view on Latinas in the U.S. and our concepts that we learned in class. Do you want to say hi, Mom?
Hi.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions for you, Mom. So the first question that I have is, do you know any Latina women in high or managerial positions?
I do. I mostly know a lot of Latinas in the education world that hold positions up in the administration office that are over um, elementary, middle school, and high school. And then I do know we have some family members that are actually up in the corporate world as well.
Yeah, on that a little bit. Like some things that we learned in class with regarding that is funny actually. Because mainly we see Latinas working in the service industry,
Mhm.
and education is it's a service, but it's not like like labor work or like services in like fast food
Fast food,
industry or
like
construction or things like that. But it's like still a service. Education is it was a high ranking career that Latinas had was a teacher and like pursuing education because that's part of our cultural upbringing. My next question was, what do you feel is the main stigma or issue with Latino women becoming powerful or maybe wanting to pursue entrepreneurship?
I think a lot of the pushback is number one, women in general, of course, usually have a problem climbing the ladder. And I think that being a Latina on top of being a female, it's just another thing that, we feel like we have to prove ourselves and we have to work almost extra harder and demand the pay that's equal when, it's so easy for us to not demand it just because we want that position and we do the
Mhm.
job without getting the pay.
Yeah.
I think as each generation comes, I think there's been major change when you think back to the generations of, your grandma or your great grandma. It wasn't the norm. It wasn't what, women weren't supposed to get a job. It
Mhm.
was okay for women to be stay at home moms. And, each generation it changes and we become wiser and wiser. And, hopefully we have more family in our, that ends up getting a different level of education. Whereas, our family, if you think back to even our cousins, some of them didn't even graduate high school. And then
Mhm.
as we, continue to grow our family, then we have family members who not only graduate from high school, but now we're graduating from college and we're wanting to get into a higher level. I think that I had a lot of great mentorship. And I think, your grandpa, I think and your grandma, I think before my mom passed away, but I think that they instilled it in me where you don't accept less and you're just as good as the next person. And, I never even thought twice about where I was entering, not knowing Capel and just how rich it was. And it was the majority of Anglo people that live here and very wealthy people that live here.
Mhm.
And, getting a job. And I think originally, when you think back, I mean, of course, you weren't born yet, but when I first got the job at my school, I was the first Hispanic to be hired at my school.
Yeah, I
And
remember you
I was
telling me that
yeah,
actually.
I was the only one, which is crazy now, but when I was first hired and I was the only bilingual teacher there, and so many times they would have to call me out of class to come and translate, and it's just crazy now. And I felt like I was going to do anything and everything to earn my spot, to show everyone I
Mhm.
deserve to be there just as much as the next person. And I started leading different programs and different community events, like for homecoming and Veterans Day. And as I became started doing things like that, I became very friendly with parents. And I feel like, just being personable and talking to people. And I mean, 23 years later, here I am.
Intersectionality. So if you need a definition of intersectionality, it's basically the Google's definition, at least, and from my textbook, the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as like race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group of people. And it overlaps and it creates a system of discrimination or disadvantage. So, for example, like you were just mentioning how you built your reputation image in Coppell, it was still a struggle when you had to work 10 times harder as a white woman would have, or even a white man, because you're a woman, you're Hispanic, and you're a single mother. You're not like really, there's like different issues, or not issues, and we're not rich. We're not super rich people, but we're in a rich community, and we are not as rich as them. So it's different things that all intertwine together that could create a disadvantage on you or me or even David. And so that was going to be my question was, how do you think like David may face
I
intersectionality?
think he probably doesn't know a lot about it and or
Hmm.
enough about it. I think the other thing that makes it different too is our last name.
Hmm.
So when people see him, with you it was very different because you look Hispanic and
Hmm.
your brother doesn't. He looks
According to their street
well, yeah,
association with Hispanics and what we're supposed to look like. Exactly.
right,
Yes.
exactly. And so when you look at David, of course, to me, he also does, but I think, being in the school where he is and playing the sports that he plays, I think it's very not confusing, it's just a struggle.
Hmm. It's an
Because
identity crisis. You
it
could possibly.
I
Yeah.
think so with him, and when I've talked to him about it, he says he's
I went through it
processing.
too. I
You
did
did.
too.
But you
I did too.
but
I
you
talked about it in
switched
my
over
papers.
soon you switched over sooner than he did,
Hmm.
like, you recognized it and you embraced it sooner than
Hmm.
he did. He's still kind of on the struggle bus, like, he still
Hmm.
doesn't know which side he's on. There have been times that he and I were talking and he said, "Oh, yeah, mom, I had to do I can't remember what it was for a test or something," and he said, "I make sure to mark that I was Hispanic," and I said, "Well,
Yeah.
good, you are," but I
Yeah.
think with him, I think, kids his age, it's hard, and unfortunately, they still do see color and they shouldn't.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I think we're finally getting to a point where it's not as bad as it used to be. And I think for David, it's just he's torn because he knows
Yeah.
that, he is half.
Hmm.
So
And I think it has to do with his environment as well, like who surrounds him. It's a bunch of white people, like you said, so it's confusing because we are half white. So it's not that we're appropriating anything, but it's just we are confused. That will kind of flow into our last concept, last topic we're going to talk about, which is LGBTQ issues. Question is, why do you think it is difficult for a mother or a father or just a family member in general to be accepting of another family member's sexual preference or identity?
well, the majority of Hispanics are usually Catholic.
Mhm.
And of course, in Catholicism, it's frowned upon. And so that's one of the reasons. And then, two, just most of the men are machismos and
Mhm.
they don't want to
That's
believe.
actually that's a term we talk about,
Is it? Yeah. And
machismo. Mhm.
a lot of these men don't want their son to be anything but a powerful man that is the
The
family.
dominance, the provider, the breadwinner.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of families have problems with this, and, I think it's usually the men. I don't see a lot of women that have a problem with this. I think it's usually the men that are more insecure, not proud, embarrassed, and, if women do feel that way, it's because of their religion, more
Mhm.
so, and they're just disappointed. They feel like they're, disappointing God and the beliefs in the Bible, and
Mhm.
so, I mean, that's just how it's been.
Mhm. This is kind of gonna be my wrap up, but you kind of said how you see that Latino men tend to struggle with this concept more than Latinas. And I do agree with you. And that was actually what our articles and textbooks talked about is how a lot of the time there's not a lot of research on Latinas within the LGBTQ because Latinos get the brunt end. Like it's terrible. Like the amount of stuff
Yeah,
that they have to go through just to love someone or have their
live
sexual
life.
preference.
Yeah.
Yes. And but for Latinas, I don't know if you ever heard of the term Marianismo.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's basically a term that is a concept that basically the Latin culture compares or tries they want women to emulate the Virgin Mary.
Mm.
And so that's why it's a problem when women are the gender roles within our culture are so strong. Like, and that's why Latinos have struggle, like they struggle with it too, but Latinos really do because we are compared to the Virgin Mary. But yeah, that's really all that I had to ask you. Thank you so
Oh,
much for joining me
you're
and talking
welcome.
to me about this subject.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome. I got up because my laptop was about to die, so I was gonna plug it in, but I guess I need to.
No, it's totally fine. I think this is
Okay.
long enough,
Okay.
honestly. So
Sounds good.
okay, let
Okay,
me.
well,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.